Lena Carter was not the kind of woman you'd see on TV or in fashion magazines. She didn't wear designer clothes or drive expensive cars. She wore jeans, simple tops, and always had her hair tied up in a ponytail. Lena lived in a small town, called Brookville, which was surrounded by trees, quiet roads, and friendly people. She worked as a school teacher at the local elementary school. Every morning she woke up early, made herself a cup of coffee, packed her lunch, and walked to work. The kids loved her because she was kind, patient, and always smiled. Even when a student made a mistake, she never shouted. She just helped them learn from it. Lena's husband, Marcus Carter, was just like her, calm, humble, and soft-spoken. He wasn't the kind of man who liked to talk about himself. He wore plain shirts and jeans, and his car was a simple black Toyota. People often wondered how he and Lena could afford their nice little house with the white fence and big garden. But no one ever asked, and they never told. Marcus used to work from home. He would sit in his study for hours, typing on his laptop. Sometimes he got calls from different countries. But most people in town thought he was just some office worker who found a way to work remotely. No one guessed that Marcus was actually one of the richest men in the country. Years ago, Marcus had started a tech company that built smart software for big businesses. It became so successful that he sold it when he was still young. Overnight, he became a billionaire. But instead of buying mansions, yachts, or fancy cars, Marcus chose a different life. He met Lena during one of his rare trips to a small town where he was thinking of retiring. They met at a bookstore. Lena was reading a children's book, and Marcus was looking for something to read while traveling. They started talking, and from that day on, they were inseparable. They got married quietly, without any big parties or expensive dresses. They moved into a peaceful town and tried to live like normal people. Marcus didn't want attention. He wanted peace, love, and a life without pressure. Lena didn't care about money. She cared about kindness, honesty, and making people feel good. In Brookville, they lived a very simple life. Lena taught school, and Marcus helped her grade papers sometimes. He also volunteered at the local library and helped fix computers at the community center. People liked him but never suspected he was rich. Even their neighbors thought they were just a sweet couple who had saved enough money to live comfortably. Their house was beautiful, but not too big. Their dinners were homemade, not delivered, from fancy restaurants. They went for walks every evening and always said hello to everyone they passed. Sometimes friends or students would ask Lena why she didn't take a fancier job or travel more. She would smile and say, "I already have everything I need." And she did. She had a loving husband, a job she enjoyed, a cozy home, and a peaceful life. She didn't care about being famous or rich. She believed that true happiness came from within, from doing good, helping others, and living with love. But even though Lena and Marcus tried to stay out of the spotlight, life sometimes has a way of pulling people back into the world they left behind. One day, Lena decided she needed a new car. Her old Toyota had served her well for over 10 years, but now it was making strange noises and breaking down more often. She thought maybe it was time to upgrade. So, dressed in her usual jeans and sweater, Lena drove to the nearest city to visit a high-end car dealership. It was a place she had only seen from the outside before. Big glass windows, shiny cars lined up perfectly, and men in suits walking around like they owned the world. As soon as she stepped inside, she felt out of place. Everyone there looked perfect. Polished shoes, perfect hair, and expensive watches. Lena, with her worn-out jacket and simple style, felt like she didn't belong. She approached the front desk and politely asked if someone could help her. A tall man in a suit came over and barely looked at her. "Can I help you?" he asked, in a tone that suggested he hoped the answer was no. "Yes," Lena said kindly. "I'm looking to buy a new car. Something safe and comfortable." The man raised an eyebrow. "Do you have a budget in mind?" Lena smiled. "I'd like to see what options you have between $30,000 and $50,000. The man gave her a cold look. Then, without saying a word, he turned and walked away. Another salesman came over and whispered something to him. Both men glanced at Lena and laughed quietly. Finally, the first man came back and said, "Ma'am, this is a luxury dealership. We don't deal with people who can't afford our cars. Maybe you should try somewhere else." Lena blinked. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even surprised. But she was hurt. Not because of the price tag. She knew she wasn't rich, but because of the way she was treated. Like she didn't matter. Still, she kept her head high. "Okay," she said calmly. "Thank you for your time." She walked out of the dealership with her shoulders straight, but her heart was heavy. That night, she told Marcus what happened. She didn't ask for revenge or drama. She just shared the moment like she would share any other part of her day. Marcus listened quietly. His face didn't change, but inside he was upset. He had left the world of power and money behind, but he couldn't stand seeing someone he loved disrespected. "I'll take care of it," he said gently. Lena smiled. "It's okay, really. I've had worse days." But Marcus had already made up his mind. The next morning, something amazing happened. At exactly 9 a.m., a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up in front of the same dealership. Inside were two people. A sharply dressed man with calm confidence, and a smiling woman wearing jeans and a sweater. The whole dealership stopped, because the man driving the Rolls-Royce was none other than Marcus Carter, the billionaire, who once ruled the tech world. And sitting beside him was Lena, the simple teacher who had been kicked out the day before. The next morning the whole city was waking up. Birds were chirping, people were heading to work, and the car dealership, Luxury Motors, opened its shiny glass doors for another day of business. Inside, the sales team was already buzzing with gossip. "Did you see that Rolls-Royce parked outside?" said one junior salesman. "I thought that was a movie set," laughed another. But they weren't far from the truth. Because inside that black Rolls-Royce Phantom sat Marcus Carter, the billionaire who had once made headlines when he sold his tech startup for over $3 billion. Beside him, smiling quietly, was Lena, the same woman who had walked into this very dealership just the day before, dressed in jeans and a sweater, only to be turned away like she didn't belong. Now she wasn't here to ask questions or look around. She was here to make a statement. Marcus stepped out first. He was wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, and a silver watch that probably cost more than most people's cars. His shoes were polished, his hair neatly combed, and his eyes calm but full of purpose. Lena followed, still in her jeans and sweater. But today she carried herself differently. Not because she wanted to prove anything, but because she knew who she was. Together they walked through the front door of Luxury Motors. The room went silent. Salesman stopped talking mid-sentence. A receptionist dropped her pen. Everyone stared. The man who had sent Lena away the day before, Mr. Jameson, the head sales manager, almost choked on his coffee. He rushed forward, trying to smooth things over. "Mr. Carter, what an honor! We didn't expect you." Marcus held up a hand. "I'm not here to talk," he said calmly. "I'm here to buy." There was a pause. "Buy what exactly?" asked Mr. Jameson, confused. "All of it," Marcus replied. A murmur spread across the showroom. "All of it?" Mr. Jameson repeated, blinking. "Yes," Marcus said. "Every car on display, every new model, every luxury SUV, sports car, convertible. It's everything." Jameson looked like someone had poured ice water down his back. "You're joking," he whispered. "No," Marcus said. "I'm not." He pulled out a black checkbook and handed it to the stunned manager. "For the full amount," he said. "No discounts, no negotiations." Everyone stood frozen. Some employees were whispering. Others couldn't believe their ears. Lena stood beside Marcus, watching it all unfold. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even surprised. She just felt peaceful. This wasn't about revenge, it was about respect and kindness, because later that day, a video started circulating online. Someone from outside the dealership had seen the Rolls-Royce arrive and decided to film it. When they saw Lena step out and walk inside with Marcus, curiosity turned into excitement. Then came the moment Marcus handed over the check. That clip went viral. Within hours, it had millions of views. People were shocked, inspired. Some were even emotional. How could someone treat her like that? One comment read, "She didn't even get mad. She just came back with grace," wrote another. Soon, news channels picked up the story. Headlines read, "Teacher humiliated at car dealership. Returns with billionaire husband." Billionaire buys entire showroom. After wife is mistreated. Kindness over money. A love story that broke the internet. Back at the dealership, the mood had completely changed. Mr. Jameson tried to call Marcus to apologize, but the number went straight to voicemail. Inside the office, he sat at his desk, staring at the giant check in his hands. He realized something. Money doesn't buy class. Respect isn't given by wealth. It's earned through how you treat people. And he had failed that test. Later that week, Luxury Motors issued a public apology. They announced new training programs for their staff, focused on treating every customer with dignity and respect. They also donated money to a charity that helped low-income families buy reliable vehicles. Meanwhile, Marcus and Lena returned home to Brookville, where life quickly went back to normal. She taught school again. He worked from home. Their life was simple, peaceful. But now, people in town looked at them differently, not because they were rich, but because they showed the world that love, humility, and kindness are more powerful than any bank account. And sometimes, the best way to teach someone a lesson isn't with anger. It's with silence, grace, and a Rolls-Royce. The week after the dealership incident passed quickly. Life in Brookville returned to normal. Birds chirped, kids laughed at school, and Lena kept teaching her students with the same warm smile. But outside their quiet town, the world was still buzzing. News of Marcus buying the entire car showroom had gone viral. People were talking about it on TV, social media, and even in schools. Teachers used the story to teach students about kindness, dignity, and how money doesn't always define a person's worth. Some people thought Marcus had bought all those cars just to show off. But those who watched the full video knew better. He hadn't yelled or argued. He hadn't shown off his wealth. He had simply walked in, paid for everything, and left without drama. And that, more than anything, made people think. Back at home, Lena sat on the porch in the evening, sipping tea and watching the sunset. Marcus joined her, holding 2 mugs. "You okay?" he asked gently. She smiled. "I'm fine. Just thinking." "About what?" She looked at him. "About how people see us now." Marcus nodded. He understood. They weren't just the quiet couple from down the road anymore. They were the billionaire and his teacher wife. The woman who was kicked out of a dealership and came back in a Rolls-Royce. It was strange. Fame had found them again. "I don't want this," Lena said softly. "Not the attention, not the labels." "I know," Marcus replied. "We never wanted this life." They sat quietly for a moment. Then Lena spoke again. "You know, I feel bad for Mr. Jameson." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "The man who treated you badly?" "Why?" "Because he didn't understand," she said. "Maybe no one ever taught him that respect isn't just for rich people." Marcus thought about that. He had seen the world of money and power. He had lived it. And he knew how easy it was to forget real values when you're surrounded by luxury and ego. He looked at Lena and smiled. "You really are something special," she laughed. "I just believe in second chances." That night, they talked for hours. Not about revenge, not about money, but about purpose. They both agreed. Life wasn't meant to be spent hiding or showing off. It was meant to be lived meaningfully, helping others, making a difference, no matter how much money you had. The next morning, Marcus picked up the phone. He called a lawyer, then a charity founder, then a local school board. By lunchtime, plans were already being made. A new foundation would be started. Its name? The Carter Foundation, for Kindness and Education. Its mission? To help small-town schools get better resources, to train customer service workers in empathy and respect, and to give scholarships to students who couldn't afford college. Lena helped design the programs. She knew what kids needed. She had been teaching for years. Marcus handled the funding and logistics. He had the experience from his old tech company. Together they created something beautiful, something real. Soon news spread about the foundation. People were surprised. Instead of using their fame to enjoy luxury, the Carters were using it to help others. In Brookville, parents began thanking Lena at school drop-offs. Students wrote her thank you notes. One little girl handed her a drawing of a superhero wearing a dress and holding books instead of weapons. "You're my hero," the girl said. Lena hugged her tightly. Meanwhile, Marcus visited the town library and donated new computers. He also offered free online learning tools for students across the state. He didn't do it for praise. He did it because it felt right. Back at Luxury Motors, Mr. Jameson read about the foundation in the newspaper. He felt ashamed. Ashamed of how he had treated Lena, ashamed of how he judged people based on looks. He decided to reach out. He sent Marcus a letter. It said, "Dear Mr. Carter, I'm writing to apologize for how we treated your wife. I realize now that respect should have nothing to do with how someone looks or what they wear. I've changed our training program. We now teach our staff to treat every customer like family. Thank you for teaching me a lesson I won't forget. Sincerely." Mr. Jameson. Marcus read the letter twice. Then he turned to Lena. "Sheep can change their wool," he said with a smile. Lena laughed. Or maybe they just needed a mirror. Later that week, Marcus called Mr. Jameson. "I accept your apology," he said. "But there's something else you can do." "What is it?" Mr. Jameson asked. "Support our foundation," Marcus said. "Give back." There was silence on the line. Then Mr. Jameson said, "Yes, sir. I'd be honored." From that day on, things began to change. The dealership became known not for its expensive cars, but for its excellent customer service. Brookville became known as the town where a simple teacher and a quiet billionaire showed the world that true power lies not in money, but in kindness and love and doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. Gay? After the big dealership story went viral and the Carter Foundation was launched, life for Marcus and Lena changed in many ways, but not in the way most people expected. They didn't move into a mansion or start hosting fancy parties. They didn't hire bodyguards or change their names. They stayed right where they were, in their cozy house with the white fence and flower garden in the quiet town of Brookville. Lena kept teaching at the elementary school. She still woke up early, made her coffee, packed her lunch, and walked to work. The only difference now was that her students sometimes brought her flowers or drew pictures of her and Marcus in front of the Rolls-Royce. She loved every moment. One day, a student named Emily asked her, "Miss Lena, are you famous?" Lena laughed. "I don't think so, sweetie. But I saw you on TV," another child said. "So did my mom," shouted another. Lena smiled. "Well, if being kind makes me famous, then yes. I guess I am." The class clapped. That night, she told Marcus about it. He just smiled and said, "You're more famous than you think." But even though the Carters tried to live quietly, the world outside wasn't done with them yet. Reporters wanted interviews, TV shows offered them money to appear. Magazines wanted to write stories about their lives. Many people would have said yes, but Marcus and Lena politely said no to everything. "We don't want attention," Lena said. "We want to help." So instead of doing interviews, they focused on their foundation. They started building better classrooms in small towns. They gave free computers to schools that couldn't afford them. They helped train teachers in new ways, to teach reading and math, and they gave scholarships to kids who dreamed of going to college but couldn't afford it. Soon, other rich people started joining them. Some donated money. Others volunteered their time. Even companies began helping. It turned into something bigger than just Marcus and Lena. It became a movement. Back at Luxury Motors, Mr. Jameson kept his promise. He trained his staff in kindness and respect. He even started giving free car checkups to low-income families. He invited Lena and Marcus to come see the changes. They did, and when they walked into the dealership this time, everyone stood up and clapped. Not because they were rich, but because they had shown them what true class looked like. Still, not everyone was happy. Some people online started saying mean things. Why is she getting so much attention? Just because her husband is rich? She's not even special. She got lucky. Marcus read some of those comments once. He didn't get angry. He just closed the laptop and said, "People say things when they don't understand love." Lena agreed. "Let's just keep doing good. That's the only reply we need." And they did. One day, Lena got a letter from a young girl named Alicia. She wrote, "Dear Miss Lena, I'm 13 years old. I live in a small town far away. I saw your story online. Before that, I thought only rich people could make a difference. Now I know that's not true. I want to be a teacher too, like you. I want to help kids feel smart and safe. Thank you for showing me that I can. Love. Alicia." Lena read the letter 3 times, then she showed it to Marcus. He read it and smiled. "This," he said, "is why we do it." That night they both sat on the porch again watching the stars. "I never thought our life would turn out like this," Lena said. "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "I mean, I thought I'd just be a teacher. Marry someone kind, live a simple life. And now?" he asked. She looked at him. "Now I'm still a teacher, and I'm still married to someone kind, and I still live a simple life," Marcus laughed. "Just with more cameras around." They both smiled, because deep down, they knew the truth. Fame doesn't change who you are. It just shows the world who you already were, and Marcus and Lena had always been good people. Now, the world just got to see it. The next morning, Lena got ready for school like always. She wore jeans, a sweater, and her favorite pair of comfortable shoes. She kissed Marcus goodbye. Then she walked out the door, down the street, past the trees, toward the school, toward the children, toward the future. And somewhere behind her, a Rolls-Royce sat quietly in the garage, waiting. Not for fame, not for power, but for the next time it would be needed. And until then, the Carters lived simply, with love, with peace, and with purpose. Time passed quietly in Brookville. The seasons changed. Leaves fell from the trees. Snow came and went, and life went on as usual. Lena kept teaching. Marcus kept working behind the scenes to help their foundation grow. They still walked together every evening. They still smiled at neighbors. They still lived simply. But something had changed in the world around them. Because of their story, people began to think differently. Not just about money, but about kindness, about how we treat each other, about what really matters. In schools across the country, teachers started using Lena's story to teach students a very important lesson. You don't need to be rich or famous to make a difference. You just need to be kind. And that message spread like fire. Students wrote essays about it. Parents talked about it at dinner tables. Even businesses started changing how they treated customers. Back at Luxury Motors, Mr. Jameson made sure his dealership stayed true to its promise. He trained new employees not just in sales, but in respect and empathy. He even invited Lena to speak at their yearly staff meeting. She said yes. When she walked into the dealership this time, there were no cold stares, no whispers, only applause. Mr. Jameson stood up and said, "We used to judge people by what they wore or what car they drove. But now we know better, because of you." Lena smiled. "Thank you. But remember, it's not about me. It's about everyone you meet." Then she gave a short talk about kindness, humility, and why treating people with respect is one of the most powerful things anyone can do. Afterward, many employees came up to her to say thank you. One young man said, "I want to be like your husband, not because he's rich, but because he does good things." Lena smiled. "You already can be." Back home, Marcus read about the event online. He was proud, not of himself, but of the change. Change doesn't always come from big speeches or expensive gifts. Sometimes it starts with a simple act of kindness. That's exactly what happened next. Few months later, the Carter Foundation opened its first full school in a small village far away. It was called the Alicia Learning Center, named after the young girl who had written Lena that beautiful letter. The school had bright classrooms, clean drinking water, and even a small library filled with books. On the opening day, students lined up outside with balloons and handmade signs. One sign read, "Welcome home, Miss Lena." Another said, "Thank you for believing in us." Inside the school, Lena gave a speech. Her voice was soft, but full of emotion. "I didn't start this foundation to be famous," she said. "I started it because I believe every child deserves a chance to learn, to dream, and to grow." She looked at the kids. Their eyes were wide with hope. "And I believe that kindness," she continued, "is the strongest power we have." Then she turned to Marcus, who was sitting in the back row, smiling proudly. "This journey began with something small," she said. "A moment where someone forgot to be kind. But that moment reminded us all how important it is to never forget." The crowd clapped. Later that day, a little girl named Molly stood up and asked, "Miss Lena, will you visit us again?" Lena smiled. "Of course. This is just the beginning." As they left the school, Marcus whispered, "You've built something real." "So have you," Lena replied. Years passed, the foundation grew. More schools were built. More scholarships were given. More lives were touched. And yet, Marcus and Lena still lived the same way. They still walked through town hand in hand. They still drank tea on the porch at sunset. They still believed that love, kindness, and doing the right thing mattered more than anything else. One day, a reporter came to Brookville to write a story about them. He asked Lena, "Do you ever miss being normal?" Lena laughed. "I am normal. I just try to live with purpose." "And what is your purpose?" the reporter asked. Lena looked at Marcus. Then she said, "To teach, to help, to care, and to remind the world that kindness is free. But it's priceless." The reporter wrote those words in his article. They went viral, and once again, the Carters showed the world that the richest people aren't the ones with the most money. They're the ones with the biggest hearts, because in the end, it's not how much you have, it's how much you give. And that is the true legacy of Lena and Marcus Carter.